The woman standing in the rain looked like she might disappear if the downpour grew any heavier, and Jareth Blackthorn noticed her because she was the only person at the estate sale who wasn't bartering. She simply stood at the edge of the gravel drive, watching strangers cart away furniture that had clearly meant something once, her dark hair plastered to her cheeks, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of a coat that had seen better years. The estate behind her was modest by his standards, but lovely in its way, all ivy-covered brick and leaded windows, the sort of place humans spent generations filling with memories. Now it was being picked clean by creditors and vultures, and she was letting it happen with a stillness that spoke of exhausted grief. Jareth had come only because his business manager had mentioned a collection of first-edition manuscripts that might interest him. He had lived long enough to appreciate the written word in all its forms, and besides, walking among humans during the day, or rather, the gray, overcast afternoon when the sun was safely hidden, kept him grounded in the world as it turned. He wore a black suit beneath a long coat, his white hair tied back, his pale skin drawing a few curious glances that he ignored. Most humans saw what they expected: a wealthy eccentric, perhaps unwell, certainly aloof. But this woman drew his attention away from the books. She was speaking, he realized, her lips moving though no one stood near enough to hear. Jareth's hearing, sharpened by centuries, caught the words even over the drumming rain. "I just wanted a home," she said, so quietly it was nearly a breath. "That's all I ever wanted." The words struck him with unexpected force, lodging somewhere beneath his ribs where nothing should have been able to reach anymore. He found himself moving toward her before he had consciously decided to do so, his steps silent on the wet gravel. "Then let this castle be yours now," he said. She startled, turning to face him with wide eyes the color of dark honey. Up close, she was younger than he'd first thought, perhaps mid-20s, with fine bones and a mouth that looked like it smiled often, though it was pressed thin now with shock. "I'm sorry," she managed. "You wish for a home," Jareth said, keeping his voice level, matter of fact. "I have more than one. I'm offering you a castle if you'll accept it." She blinked rain from her lashes, studying him with a wariness that was entirely sensible. He was a stranger making an absurd offer, and she had no reason to trust him. Still, something flickered in her expression. Not hope, not yet, but perhaps the faintest curiosity about what hope might feel like. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Jareth Blackthorn. I'm—" He paused, considering how much truth to offer. "Someone who understands what it means to lose a home, and someone with the means to help, if you'll allow it. People don't just give away castles. I'm not giving it away. I'm offering you a place to live in exchange for—" He hesitated again, then decided on honesty. "Company, perhaps. My homes are large and empty. It would be pleasant to know someone was making use of the space." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering slightly. "That's insane." "Likely," Jareth agreed. "But the offer stands. You may take time to consider it, of course. I don't require an answer this moment." "I don't even know you," she said, but her eyes drifted back to the house behind her, where a man was carrying out a rolled carpet that had probably been her grandmother's. The longing in her face was so raw it was painful to witness. "Then allow me to introduce myself properly," Jareth said. He produced a card from his inner pocket, somehow still dry despite the rain, and offered it to her. "My contact information: the castle I'm speaking of is in the countryside about an hour from here, in the valley beneath Thornwood Ridge. If you'd like to see it before deciding, I can arrange a visit." She took the card with trembling fingers, reading it quickly. "This is real. Quite real. Why?" The question came out almost angry. "Why would you do this?" Jareth met her eyes, letting her see his sincerity. "Because I heard you wish for a home, and I happen to have one that needs someone to care for it. Sometimes the world aligns strangely. I've learned not to question it." A crack of thunder made her flinch, and Jareth realized she was soaked through, shaking with cold. He slipped off his coat and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest, ignoring the way the rain immediately began soaking his shirt. "You'll freeze," she said. "I'm hardier than I look. Please keep it." She pulled the coat tighter, and he could see the exact moment exhaustion won out over caution. "My name is Lyra Reeves," she said quietly. "This was my family's home for 4 generations. My father died 2 years ago, and I couldn't keep up with the debts. I tried, but—" She shook her head. "I'm losing everything today." "Then you have nothing to lose by at least looking at what I'm offering," Jareth said gently. "Come see the castle. Tomorrow, if you like. Make your decision from there." Lyra looked down at the card again, then back up at him, searching his face for something deception, perhaps, or madness. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her enough to nod. "Tomorrow," she agreed, "but I'm bringing a friend and pepper spray." "Sensible," Jareth said, and felt the corner of his mouth lift despite himself. "I'll send a car at 10 if that suits you." "I'll drive myself, thanks. I still have a car. For now." "As you prefer. The address is on the card." He stepped back, giving her space. "Until tomorrow then, Miss Reeves." He turned and walked back toward his own vehicle, feeling her gaze on him the entire way. Only when he was safely inside did he allow himself to wonder what in all the hells he had just done. The offer had been pure impulse, something he hadn't indulged in for decades. He had properties, yes, more than he needed, accumulated over centuries of careful investment. The castle at Thornwood was real, a sprawling Gothic structure he'd acquired 30 years ago and barely visited. It was too large, too full of echoes, too much a reminder of the home he'd lost so long ago that sometimes he could barely remember the shape of its towers. But something about Lyra Reeves, standing in the rain mourning her lost home, had cracked open a part of him he'd thought sealed away. Perhaps it was time to fill one of his empty houses with life again. Perhaps it was time to remember what home could mean, and if she accepted, well, he would ensure she was safe, comfortable, and free to make the place truly hers. It was little enough to offer when he had so much. The rain followed him all the way back to his city residence, and for once, he didn't mind it. Lyra sat in her friend Meredith's cramped apartment that night, staring at the business card like it might sprout wings. "You're actually considering this," Meredith said, handing her a mug of tea. "Lyra, this is how people end up in true crime documentaries." "I know how it sounds," Lyra said. "But Mare, you should have seen him. He wasn't creepy. He was just direct, honest almost. Honestly insane. Who offers a stranger a castle?" "Someone with too many castles?" Lyra tried for a smile, but it felt weak. She'd spent the evening looking up Jareth Blackthorn online, finding a trail of legitimate business ventures, charitable foundations, and real estate holdings that stretched back decades. No scandals, no criminal record, just a very wealthy, very private man who seemed to exist on the edges of high society without ever quite participating in it. The photos she found were few and always slightly blurred, as if he moved just before the shutter clicked. But they matched the man she'd met. Pale, elegant, with an ageless quality that she'd initially attributed to good genes and expensive skincare. "He could be a serial killer," Meredith said. "He could be. But I'll be homeless in 3 days, Mer. The bank's taking the house. I've got nowhere to go except your couch, and you can barely afford this place as it is." Meredith's face softened. "You know you're welcome here as long as you need." "I know, and I'm grateful. But if there's even a chance this is real—" Lyra set down the tea, pressing her palms to her eyes. "I just want a home, somewhere I can stay, somewhere that's mine. Is that so much to ask?" "No, honey, it's not." Meredith sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Okay, we'll go look at this castle tomorrow, together, and if it's remotely sketchy, we leave immediately, and I'm calling the cops. Deal?" "Deal." The drive to Thornwood Ridge took them through countryside that grew increasingly wild and beautiful, rolling hills giving way to dense forest and rocky outcroppings. Lyra's ancient sedan rattled over the winding roads, Meredith White knuckling the passenger door whenever they rounded a particularly sharp curve. "If this castle is real, why does he need someone to live in it?" Meredith asked. "Can't he just hire a caretaker?" "Maybe he has caretakers, maybe he wants someone to actually live there, make it feel less empty." Lyra didn't mention the loneliness she'd sensed in Jareth Blackthorn, the same hollow ache she carried herself, It felt too intimate to share, too much like admitting she'd connected with a stranger over something she couldn't quite name. The GPS led them down a narrow lane that tunneled through ancient oaks, their branches meeting overhead to create a living archway. Then the trees broke, and Lyra hit the brakes so hard Meredith yelped. "Holy hell," Meredith breathed. The castle rose before them like something from a fever dream, all gray stone towers and Gothic arches, climbing roses and leaded windows that caught the morning light and threw it back in fragments. It perched on a hillside overlooking a valley that stretched green and gold to the horizon, and it was absolutely, impossibly beautiful. "He's giving you this," Meredith said faintly. "A literal castle. Lyra, this is insane. You've mentioned that." But Lyra's heart was hammering, hope and fear tangling in her chest until she couldn't tell them apart. She drove slowly up the gravel drive, parking in a courtyard where a fountain burbled softly, surrounded by herb gardens that smelled of lavender and rosemary. Jareth appeared in the doorway before they'd even gotten out of the car, dressed more casually today in dark trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked even paler in the daylight, or rather, the cloudy morning light, his white hair loose around his shoulders, and his eyes a shade of gray that reminded Lyra of storm clouds. "Miss Reeves," he said, descending the steps with fluid grace. "I'm glad you came, and you've brought a friend. Excellent." "This is Meredith," Lyra said. "She's here to make sure you're not a serial killer." "Understandable." Jareth offered Meredith his hand, which she shook warily. "I assure you, I have no sinister intentions. Would you like the tour?" The interior of the castle was even more breathtaking than the exterior. Soaring ceilings with exposed beams, stone fireplaces large enough to stand in, windows that flooded the rooms with silvery light. The furniture was sparse but exquisite, all antiques that looked original to various centuries, and the whole place had an air of faded grandeur, like a duchess who'd lost her fortune but retained her dignity. "It's too much," Lyra whispered, as Jareth led them through a library that could have housed a university's worth of books. "This is too much for one person." "Precisely why it should have someone living in it," Jareth said. He trailed his fingers along a shelf, and Lyra noticed his hands were long-fingered and elegant, the hands of a pianist or a surgeon. "I acquired this property decades ago with grand plans that never materialized. Now it sits empty except for a small staff who maintain it. It deserves better." "What would you expect from me?" Lyra asked. "If I agreed to this?" "Simply to live here, make it yours, fill it with whatever makes you comfortable." He paused, considering. "I would visit occasionally, if that's acceptable. I have business in the area from time to time, but your privacy would be respected, and you'd have full run of the property." "Rent?" Meredith asked sharply. "None." "Bills? Utilities?" "Covered." "What's the catch?" Jareth smiled, and it transformed his face from austere to almost warm. "The catch, Miss Meredith, is that I'm a very old man with more money than purpose, and it would please me to know this place was being loved again. If that seems suspicious, I can only say I understand your concern, but I have no ulterior motives beyond the ones I've stated." They finished the tour in the conservatory, a glass-walled room full of plants that seemed to thrive despite minimal care, sunlight, or what passed for it today, streaming through the panes to create patterns on the flagstone floor. Lyra stood in the center, turning slowly, and felt something in her chest crack open. This could be home. The thought was so powerful it nearly brought her to her knees. After 2 years of fighting and failing, of watching her family's legacy slip away piece by piece, here was a place that could be hers, a place with room to breathe, to grow, to become whoever she was supposed to be next. "I need to know why," she said, turning to face Jareth. "The real reason. Please." He held her gaze for a long moment, and she saw something ancient move behind his eyes, a sorrow so deep it seemed to have its own gravity. "I lost my home once," he said quietly. "Long ago. It was taken from me by people I trusted, and I've never been able to settle anywhere since. Every property I own is just a building, just walls and roof. I thought perhaps if I could give someone else the home they needed, it might—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Forgive me, that's more honesty than you likely wanted." "No," Lyra said. "That's exactly what I needed to hear. She looked at Meredith, who was frowning but no longer looked actively alarmed. "It's your call," Meredith said. "But Lyra, if you do this, I'm visiting regularly, and you're keeping me updated daily. Deal?" "Deal!" Lyra turned back to Jareth, heart in her throat. "Okay, yes, I'll accept your offer. And thank you. I don't know how to thank you properly, but living here will be thanks enough," Jareth said. "When would you like to move in? Is tomorrow too soon?" His smile returned, softer this time. "Tomorrow is perfect." Moving in was surreal. Lyra had so few possessions after the estate sale that everything fit in her car and Meredith's truck in a single trip. The few pieces of furniture she'd managed to save her grandmother's rocking chair, her father's desk, a trunk of photo albums looked almost comically small in the castle's vast rooms, but Jareth had assured her she could rearrange or requisition anything she needed. "There's a storage attic full of furniture from various eras," he'd told her. "Use whatever appeals to you. Burn the rest if you like." She wouldn't burn anything, of course, but the permission to make the space her own was intoxicating. The staff Jareth had mentioned turned out to be 3 people. Mrs. Thorne, a brisk woman in her 60s who served as housekeeper, her husband Robert, who maintained the grounds, and a shy young man named Peter who seemed to handle everything else. They greeted Lyra with polite warmth, showed her to the suite of rooms Jareth had designated as hers bedroom, sitting room, and private bath, all larger than her entire childhood home, and then largely left her alone. That first night, Lyra wandered the castle like a ghost herself, trailing her fingers over stone walls worn smooth by centuries, peering into rooms full of covered furniture, climbing the tower stairs to look out over the valley as the sun set in shades of purple and gold. The castle was full of shadows and echoes, but they didn't feel threatening. They felt patient, as if the building itself was waiting to see what she'd do next. She'd just returned to her room, was considering actually unpacking, when there was a soft knock on the door. Jareth stood in the hallway, still dressed in dark clothes that made his pale skin seem to glow. "I wanted to ensure you had everything you needed," he said. "But I can leave you to settle in if you prefer." "No, it's fine, come in." Lyra stepped back, suddenly aware of how intimate it was to invite him into her bedroom, even if the room was the size of a tennis court. "I was just exploring." "What do you think?" "I think it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream." "It's quite real, I assure you." He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. "I'm pleased you're here, Miss Reeves. The castle already feels different." "Different how?" "Less empty." He glanced at her, and in the fading light his eyes seemed to reflect what little illumination remained, almost silver. "I'll be staying in the East Wing for the next few days, if you need anything. After that, I'll return to the city for a time. But please, consider this your home. Come and go as you please, change whatever you like, invite friends to visit. It's yours. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this. I don't want repayment. I want you to be happy here." He said it so simply, so sincerely, that Lyra felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "I'll try," she managed. "That's all anyone can do." He left her then, and Lyra sat on the edge of her new bed, a massive 4-poster thing that probably dated back 200 years, and let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from relief so overwhelming it had to escape somehow. She had a home. She had a place to stay, to breathe, to figure out what came next. And stranger still, she had a benefactor who seemed to want nothing from her except her happiness. It was too good to be true, and yet here she was. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Lyra woke early, exploring different parts of the castle each morning, slowly mapping its corridors and staircases, its hidden nooks and sunlit corners. She found a music room with a grand piano that was beautifully maintained, a greenhouse full of exotic plants, a wine cellar that could have stocked a restaurant for years. Mrs. Thorne taught her the castle's quirks, which doors stuck, which floorboards creaked, where the warmest spots were when the stone walls grew cold. Robert showed her the gardens, the stables that currently housed no horses, the walking trails that wound through the surrounding forest. And Jareth appeared at odd hours, always polite, always slightly distant, but increasingly present in her life. They had dinner together the third night, a quiet meal in the smaller dining room that still could have seated 20. Mrs. Thorne had prepared roasted chicken and vegetables, and Lyra ate while Jareth nursed a glass of red wine, barely touching his own plate. "You don't eat much," Lyra observed. "I have a limited appetite," he said. "Medical condition. I hope it doesn't make you uncomfortable." "Not at all. I was just curious." She hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask you something personal?" "You may ask. I'll decide whether to answer." "How old are you?" "Really?" His smile was mysterious. "Older than I look. I age well." "That's not an answer." "No, it's not. But it's the one you're getting for now." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What made you stay in your family's home for so long? You must have known the debts were overwhelming." Lyra set down her fork, the question hitting closer to home than she'd expected. "It was all I had left of them. My mom died when I was 12, and my dad never really recovered. He tried, but the heart wasn't there. When he passed, I thought if I could just keep the house, keep everything the way it was, I wouldn't lose them completely." "But you lost it anyway." "Yeah, I did." She took a shaky breath. "Turns out you can't fight economics with sentiment." "I'm sorry," Jareth said, and the weight of genuine empathy in his voice made her look up. "Losing your home is like losing a limb. People expect you to move on, but the phantom pain remains." "That's exactly what it's like," Lyra said, surprised by how precisely he'd captured the feeling. "How did you know?" "Because I lost mine too, remember? Though it was—" He paused, seeming to calculate. "A very long time ago." "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not particularly, but perhaps someday." He raised his glass in a small salute. "To new homes, then. May they heal what the old ones left broken." Lyra lifted her water glass, clinking it gently against his. "To new homes." As the days turned to weeks, Lyra began to transform the castle in small ways. She brought in fresh flowers from the gardens, filling vases in the main rooms until the scent of roses and lavender competed with the stone and age smell of the building. She rearranged furniture, pulling pieces from storage to create cozy reading nooks and conversation areas. She even convinced Mrs. Thorne to help her bake, filling the kitchen with the warmth of bread and cookies and pies. The castle responded to her efforts like a garden after rain, seeming to wake up room by room. Colors looked brighter. The shadows felt friendlier. Even the staff seemed more cheerful, humming as they worked. And Jareth noticed. "You've brought life back to this place," he said one evening, finding her in the library where she'd been cataloging books. "I haven't heard laughter in these halls in decades." Lyra looked up from her notebook, pushing her reading glasses up her nose. "You're exaggerating." "I'm not. The staff were professional before, but now they're happy. You've done that." She felt her cheeks warm at the praise. "I'm just trying to make it feel like home." "You're succeeding." He moved closer, and she was struck again by how he moved not quite like a normal person. Too fluid, too silent. "I'm glad I offered this to you. It was the right choice." "I'm glad I accepted," Lyra said, even though it seemed completely insane at the time. The best decisions often do. He picked up one of the books she'd been cataloging, a leather-bound volume of poetry from the 1800s. "You're creating order from chaos. Someone has to. This collection is incredible, but it's been organized by someone's very confusing system, or possibly no system at all." "Likely no system. I'm afraid I simply accumulated books over the years without much thought to arrangement." "Over the years," Lyra repeated, latching onto the phrase. "How many years are we talking about, Jareth?" He set the book down carefully, meeting her eyes. "You're persistent. I'm curious. You're mysterious. It's a dangerous combination." "So it seems." He was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "What if I told you I was much older than any human should be?" Lyra's heart skipped. "I'd ask how much older." "Centuries." The word hung in the air between them, impossible and yet somehow fitting. Lyra thought about his pale skin, his unusual hours, the way he never seemed to eat, the ageless quality in his eyes. "You're a vampire," she said. Not a question. Jareth went very still. "Yes." She should have been afraid, should have run. Instead, she felt pieces clicking into place, the mystery of him finally making sense. "How long have you known I suspected?" "I didn't know you suspected at all. You're very calm about this revelation." "Am I?" Lyra realized she was, in fact, remarkably calm. "I think part of me already knew. You don't move quite right. You don't eat. You're always so pale, and I've never seen you during actual sunlight, only on cloudy days." She paused. "Are you going to hurt me?" "Never." The word came out fierce, almost angry. "Lyra, I would never harm you. You have my word, for whatever that's worth." "It's worth a lot, actually. You've been nothing but kind to me." She stood, moving closer to him, studying his face in the lamplight. "How old?" 412. "And the home you lost?" "Taken by rivals in a coup. I was relatively young then, only a century or so. Foolish enough to trust the wrong people. They killed my family, burned my estate, and took everything I'd built." His jaw tightened. "I've been moving ever since, never staying, never settling, until now." "What changed?" "I heard you wish for a home," he said softly, "and I realized I'd been wishing for the same thing for 300 years. Lyra felt something shift in her chest, a connection forming that was probably unwise but felt inevitable nonetheless. "So we're both looking for the same thing." "It seems so." "And you thought giving me a home might help you find yours?" "Something like that. Perhaps I was hoping your happiness would teach me how to be happy here myself." He smiled, self-deprecating. "I told you I had selfish reasons. They don't seem very selfish to me." Lyra reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and took his hand. His skin was cool but not cold, his fingers folding gently around hers. "Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for not running screaming." "The night's still young," she teased, and was rewarded with his rare, genuine smile. From that night on, things were different between them, not worse, but deeper. Jareth stopped pretending to eat at dinners, instead keeping her company with wine, or sometimes nothing at all, just conversation. He told her stories of the centuries he'd lived, the places he'd seen, the changes he'd witnessed. She told him about her childhood, her parents, her dreams of becoming a teacher before the debts had derailed everything. "You could still teach," he pointed out one night as they sat in the conservatory, watching rain stream down the glass walls. "There are schools in the nearby towns. You could apply." "Maybe," Lyra said. "It feels strange to think about the future when the present is still so surreal." "The present will become familiar eventually, it always does, and then you'll need purpose beyond arranging furniture and cataloging books." "Are you saying I'm doing too good a job making the castle livable?" "I'm saying you're talented and intelligent, and you deserve a life beyond these walls, as lovely as they are." He shifted to face her, his expression serious. "I don't want you to feel trapped here, Lyra. This was meant to give you freedom, not limit it." "I don't feel trapped," she assured him. "I feel safe. For the first time in years, I feel safe. But you're right that I'll need more eventually. I just need time to figure out what that more looks like. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The words settled warm in her chest, a promise and a comfort all at once. But their peace was not to last. It was October when the first signs of trouble appeared. Lyra woke one morning to find Robert examining the garden wall, frowning at symbols that had been painted there during the night, strange, archaic markings that made her skin crawl just looking at them. "What is that?" she asked. "Don't know, miss," Robert said, "but I don't like it. Showed it to Mr. Blackthorn already. He's looking into it." She found Jareth in his study, a room she rarely entered, surrounded by old books and papers. He looked up when she knocked, his expression grim. "The symbols," she said. "What are they?" "A warning and a challenge." He stood, moving to the window. There's a faction of vampires who've held a grudge against me for a very long time. I thought I'd left them behind, but it seems they've found me." "The same ones who took your original home?" "Yes. They call themselves the Court of Shadows. Dramatic, I know, but they take themselves very seriously." His voice was tight with old anger. "They believe in vampire supremacy, in ruling humans rather than living alongside them. I refused to join them, so they destroyed me. And now they're here." "So it would seem." Lyra moved to stand beside him, looking out at the valley. "What do they want? To finish what they started, I imagine. Or to drive me out of this place too. They've spent centuries consolidating power, claiming territories. I've spent centuries avoiding them." He looked at her, concern shadowing his features. "I should send you away. This isn't your fight." "Like hell it isn't," Lyra said, surprising herself with her vehemence. "This is my home too. You gave it to me, remember? I'm not abandoning it because some dramatic vampires want to play power games. They're dangerous, Lyra. They won't hesitate to hurt you to get to me. Then we'll have to make sure they can't get to either of us." She crossed her arms. "I'm not leaving, Jareth. You'll have to physically remove me, and I'll fight you every step." He stared at her for a long moment. Then something like admiration flickered across his face. "You're remarkably stubborn." "I'm remarkably tired of losing homes. I just found this one. I'm not giving it up without a fight." "Very well, but we do this carefully, and you follow my lead on anything supernatural. Agreed?" "Agreed." Over the following weeks, the signs escalated. More symbols appeared on the property. Strange figures were spotted in the forest at night. Mrs. Thorne reported objects moved in rooms that should have been empty, and Peter found one of the garden statues smashed to pieces. Jareth brought in reinforcements, other vampires he'd allied with over the years, old friends who owed him favors or simply respected him enough to help. They arrived after dark, elegant, and dangerous-looking people with the same pale skin and ageless eyes, and they treated Lyra with cautious courtesy, clearly uncertain what to make of the human living in Jareth's castle. "This is Lyra Reeves." Jareth introduced her to a severe-looking woman named Isolde and a charming man named Severin. "She lives here. You'll protect her as you would protect me." "A human?" Isolde raised an eyebrow. "How progressive of you, Jareth." "A resident of this castle," Jareth corrected coldly. "And under my protection. Is that understood?" "Perfectly," Severin said with a slight bow to Lyra. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Reeves. Any friend of Jareth's is a friend of ours." Lyra found herself drawn into war councils, sitting in the library while vampires debated strategy and discussed the Court of Shadows' likely moves. It was surreal and terrifying and strangely exhilarating to be part of something so much larger than herself. "They'll come at the new moon," Isolde predicted. "Maximum darkness, symbolic timing. They're nothing if not theatrical." "That gives us 3 days to prepare," Jareth said. "We'll fortify the castle, set wards, prepare defenses." "You could negotiate," Severin suggested. "Offer them something they want in exchange for leaving you in peace. They want submission or death. I won't give them either." Lyra listened to it all, her mind racing. That night, after the others had dispersed to their assigned rooms, she found Jareth on the battlements, looking out over the dark valley. "You're afraid," she said quietly. "Terrified," he admitted. "Not for myself, but for you. For this place. I've already lost one home to them. I can't lose another. You won't. We won't let them take it." He turned to her, and in the moonlight he looked almost otherworldly, beautiful and alien and sad. "Why are you fighting for this, Lyra? You've only been here a few months. You could leave, start over somewhere safe." "Because it's home," she said simply. "Because you gave me something precious when I had nothing, and I won't let anyone destroy it. Because—" She hesitated, then decided to say it. "Because somewhere along the way, I started caring about you. Not just the castle, but you. And I don't abandon people I care about." Jareth closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, they were bright with emotion. "You shouldn't care about me. I'm old and dangerous and incapable of giving you the life you deserve. I'll decide what I deserve, thanks." She stepped closer, bold despite her racing heart. "And right now, I deserve to fight for my home and the person who gave it to me, so stop trying to protect me from this and let me help." "You're extraordinary," he said softly. "Do you know that? I'm stubborn and scared and probably in over my head. But I'm here and I'm staying." He reached out, cupping her face with one cool hand, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "If anything happens to you, it won't. You'll protect me. We'll protect each other." For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. The air between them felt charged, full of possibility. But then he stepped back, breaking the connection, and she felt the loss of it like a physical ache. "We should rest," he said. "The next few days will be difficult." Lyra nodded, not trusting her voice, and let him escort her back inside. The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. The vampires set wards Lyra couldn't see but could feel, subtle shifts in the air that made her skin prickle. Robert and Peter reinforced doors and windows, installing heavy shutters that could be barred from inside. Mrs. Thorne stocked the kitchen and cellars as if preparing for a siege, which, Lyra supposed, they essentially were. And Lyra herself worked to make the castle as much of a home as possible, driven by an instinct she didn't fully understand. She lit fires in every hearth. She put fresh flowers in every room. She baked bread and cookies, filling the air with warm, homey scents. "What are you doing?" Isolde asked, finding her in the kitchen on the second day. "Making it ours," Lyra said. "They want to take our home. I want them to know exactly what they're trying to destroy." Isolde studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're cleverer than you look, human. I'll take that as a compliment." It was meant as one. The night of the new moon arrived with unseasonable cold, frost glittering on the grounds despite it being early October. Lyra dressed in warm, practical clothes and joined the others in the main hall, where Jareth was giving final instructions. "They'll try to breach the walls first," he said. "When that fails, they'll attempt the doors and windows. We hold them off as long as possible, ideally until dawn. Sunlight won't kill them instantly, but it will weaken them enough to drive them back." "And if they get inside?" Severin asked. "We fight." Jareth's voice was steel. "We hold every room, every corridor, every inch of this castle. We don't give them anything." His eyes found Lyra's across the room. "You'll stay in the inner chamber with Mrs. Thorne and Peter. It's the most fortified room and—" "No," Lyra interrupted. "I'm fighting too." "Lyra, I said no. This is my home. I'm defending it." Jareth looked like he wanted to argue, but Isolde spoke up first. "Let her fight. Give her a weapon she can use. Humans can be surprisingly effective in the right circumstances." "Fine," Jareth said tightly. "But you stay near me at all times. Understood?" "Understood." He produced a knife from somewhere, a wicked-looking blade with a silver edge. "Iron and silver alloy. It won't kill a vampire, but it will hurt like hell and slow them down. Aim for major muscle groups if you have to use it." Lyra took the knife, feeling its weight in her hand. "Thank you. Don't make me regret this." They didn't have long to wait. Just after midnight, the wards began to pulse, visible now as lines of pale light across the walls and windows. Shouts came from outside, angry voices in languages Lyra didn't recognize. Then the attack began. The Court of Shadows came in force, dozens of vampires throwing themselves at the castle's defenses. The wards held, flaring bright whenever someone touched them, but Lyra could see the strain in Jareth's face as he maintained them. It was costing him energy he couldn't afford to waste. "They're probing for weaknesses," Isolde said. "They'll find one eventually." She was right. 20 minutes into the siege, one of the upper windows shattered, the ward there failing with a sound like breaking glass. 2 vampires poured through, and the battle moved inside. Lyra had never seen anything like the fight that followed. The vampires moved too fast to track properly, blurs of motion and flashes of violence that left furniture smashed and walls scarred. Jareth was in the thick of it, fighting with a precision and brutality that should have terrified her but instead filled her with fierce pride. She stayed close to him as ordered, the knife gripped tight in her hand. Most of the invaders ignored her, focused on the greater threats, but one broke away from the main fight and came straight for her. Lyra didn't think. She moved on pure instinct, ducking under the vampire's reaching hands and driving her knife up into his ribs. He screamed, the sound inhuman, and staggered back. Jareth was there in an instant, finishing what she'd started and sending the vampire crashing through a window. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, checking her over with frantic hands. "I'm fine. Keep fighting." The battle raged for hours. More windows broke. More invaders poured in. But Jareth's allies fought like demons, and slowly, painfully, they began to push the Court of Shadows back. It was near dawn when their leader finally revealed himself. He swept through the main doors, which had finally been breached like a king entering his throne room, tall and pale and radiating menace. He wore black that seemed to drink in the lamplight, and his white hair was braided with silver wire. "Jareth Blackthorn," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "Still clinging to your delusions of independence, I see." "Constantine." Jareth's voice was cold as midwinter. "You're not welcome here." "I don't require your welcome. This territory is ours by right. You've had centuries to bend the knee. Your stubbornness has become tedious. Then leave. I have no interest in your court or your territory. I just want peace." "Peace?" Constantine laughed. "You can have peace in death, or you can have it in service. Those are your options." "No," Lyra said, stepping forward before she could think better of it. "There's a third option. You can leave our home and never come back." Every vampire in the room turned to stare at her. Constantine's eyes, when they fixed on her, were flat and black, utterly without warmth. "A human," he said. "How quaint. Tell me, pet, does your master allow you to speak for him?" "She's not my pet," Jareth said, moving to stand beside Lyra. "She's the lady of this castle, and you'll address her with respect." "The lady?" Constantine's smile was cruel. "You've grown soft, Jareth, playing house with mortals. Perhaps I should put her down as a mercy." He moved, inhumanly fast, but Jareth was faster. They collided in the center of the hall, a clash of preternatural strength that made the floor shake. The other vampires surged forward, the fight reigniting with renewed violence. Lyra found herself swept into the chaos again, fighting to stay on her feet, using her knife when she had to. She saw Isolde take down 2 attackers at once, saw Severin fighting back-to-back with Robert, who'd armed himself with an iron poker, saw Mrs. Thorne, of all people, crack a vampire over the head with a cast-iron pan. But her attention kept returning to Jareth and Constantine, locked in combat that seemed to have no end. They were evenly matched, or close enough, and neither was giving ground. Then Constantine made a mistake. He overextended, and Jareth capitalized, driving him back toward the doors. The eastern horizon was just beginning to lighten, the faintest hint of dawn touching the sky. "You've lost," Jareth said. "The sun is rising. Leave now, or burn." Constantine hissed, his expression twisting with rage. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You've thrown everything you have at us, and we're still standing. You have no power here." For a long, tense moment, Constantine seemed to consider continuing the fight. But then the first true ray of sunlight broke over the hills, and he flinched back. "Retreat!" he snarled to his followers. "But remember this, Jareth, you cannot hide in this castle forever. We will have what's ours." "This will never be yours," Jareth said. "Now get out of my home." The Court of Shadows withdrew, moving with the eerie synchronization of a flock of birds, disappearing into the shadows just as the sun began to truly rise. The vampires who remained Jareth's allies looked battered but triumphant. "We held," Isolde said, sounding almost surprised. "We actually held. Because it's home," Jareth said quietly, looking around the damaged hall. "And home is worth fighting for." His eyes found Lyra's, and the emotion in them stole her breath. She crossed to him, not caring that everyone was watching, and took his hands. "We did it," she said. "We defended our home." "You were incredible," he said. "Brave and strong and—" She kissed him, cutting off whatever he'd been about to say. For a heartbeat, he froze, and she thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he was kissing her back with an intensity that made the battle seem gentle by comparison. When they finally broke apart, she was breathless and he was smiling. Really smiling, in a way she'd never seen before. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," she admitted. "I've been wanting you to do that for weeks," he replied. "I was simply too much of a coward to initiate it myself. You fought an army tonight. You're not a coward. Perhaps not in battle, but in matters of the heart, absolutely terrified. Good thing I'm braver than I look then." Someone coughed politely, and they broke apart to find the other vampires tactfully looking away, though Severin was grinning. "Perhaps we should see to the repairs," Isolde suggested, "and treat the wounded. Romance can resume after we've secured the premises." "Right," Lyra said, feeling her cheeks heat. "Yes, repairs. Good idea." But she didn't let go of Jareth's hand, and he didn't let go of hers. The days that followed were spent repairing the damage and reinforcing their defenses. Jareth's allies stayed for a week, helping to reset wards and patch walls, sharing stories and gradually warming to Lyra as they saw how much she meant to their friend. "He's different with you," Isolde told her one evening. "Lighter. I haven't seen him like this in centuries." "He gave me a home when I had nothing," Lyra said. "It's only fair I help him feel at home in return." "It's more than that, though, isn't it? You love him." Lyra didn't bother denying it. "Yes, I do." "Is that allowed? Human and vampire?" "Allowed by whom? There are no rules against it, only complications." Isolde's expression softened. "But if you can navigate those complications, there's no reason you can't be happy together. He deserves happiness, and so do you." When the last of the guests departed, the castle felt strange in its quiet. Lyra found Jareth in the library, staring out at the valley where the leaves were beginning to turn autumn colors. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. "I'm thinking that I haven't felt this settled in over 300 years, he said. "You've given me back something I thought I'd lost forever." "A home?" "A reason to have one." He turned to her, taking her hands. "I know there are complications ahead. I'm immortal, and you're not. I have enemies, and you deserve peace. But if you're willing to try navigating that together, I'm willing," Lyra interrupted. "Jareth, I love you. I don't care about complications or logistics or any of it. I just know that when I'm with you, I feel more at home than I ever have anywhere else. You're not just the person who gave me a castle. You're the person I want to share it with." "I love you too," he said, the words soft but fierce. "I have for weeks, possibly months. You've transformed this empty place into a home, and you've transformed me along with it. So, what do we do now?" "We live," he said simply. "We make this castle truly ours. We fill it with warmth and light and life. We defend it when we must and enjoy it when we can. Together." "Together," Lyra agreed. "I like the sound of that." He kissed her then, sweet and slow, and she felt the last pieces of her broken life finally click into place. The months that followed were the happiest Lyra could remember. She and Jareth settled into a partnership that felt both natural and extraordinary, learning each other's rhythms and needs. She took a position teaching at the local school, finding purpose in shaping young minds. He managed his business interests but spent more time at the castle, claiming he preferred her company to any meeting. They made the castle truly theirs, hosting dinners for Lyra's friends and Jareth's allies, opening the grounds for village festivals, becoming part of the community in ways the property never had been before. Mrs. Thorne declared it the happiest she'd seen the place, and Robert whistled while he worked in gardens that seemed to bloom with new vitality. Winter came, and with it the question of Lyra's mortality. They were sitting by the fire one evening, Lyra reading while Jareth worked on correspondence, when she finally broached the subject. "Have you thought about what happens when I get old?" she asked quietly. Jareth set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "Every day. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that I don't want to leave you, but I also don't want to make a decision this big without careful thought." "Turning is permanent," he said carefully. "You'd give up sunlight, give up aging, give up everything that makes you human. It's not a choice to make lightly. I know, but if I didn't turn, we'd have maybe 50 years together if I'm lucky, and then you'd be alone again, and I can't stand the thought of that. I would survive it. I've survived worse. Surviving isn't living, though. You taught me that. She set aside her book, moving to sit beside him. I'm not saying I want to turn tomorrow or next year, but someday, when the time feels right, I think I want that. I want forever with you, if you'll have me. If I'll have you. His laugh was shaky. Lyra, I would give you anything. Everything. The question is whether you truly want to give up the sun for me. I'm giving up nothing, she said firmly. I'm gaining eternity with the person I love in the home we've built together. That's not a sacrifice. It's a gift. He pulled her close, pressing his face into her hair. We'll discuss it more. Make sure you're certain. But yes, when the time is right, I would be honored to share forever with you. Good, that's settled then. You make eternity sound simple. With you, I think it will be. Spring arrived, and with it news that the Court of Shadows had withdrawn from the territory entirely, their hold on the region broken by their failed assault on the castle. Jareth's stand had inspired other independent vampires to resist, and Constantine's power was fracturing. It's really over? Lyra asked when Severin brought the news. As over as these things get, Severin said. They'll likely rebuild elsewhere, but they won't trouble you again. Jareth's made it clear what happens to those who threaten his home. After Severin left, Jareth found Lyra in the conservatory, tending to the plants she'd expanded into a full garden. We're safe, he said. Truly safe, for the first time since the coup. So what now? Now we throw a party, he said. A housewarming, properly done. We invite everyone who stood with us, everyone who's made this place feel like home. We open the doors and celebrate what we've built. Lyra grinned. I love that idea. When? Next month? That gives us time to plan. Next month, she agreed. Let's show the world what home looks like. The party was magnificent. They invited everyone, Jareth's vampire allies, Lyra's friends from the village and the school, the staff and their families, anyone who'd played a part in making the castle what it had become. The halls filled with laughter and music, the scent of food and flowers, the warmth of dozens of lives intersecting in celebration. Lyra wore a dress the color of midnight, and Jareth wore his finest suit, and they moved through the crowds together, hosts and partners and friends to everyone present. You've done something remarkable here, Isolde said, finding them near midnight. Not just surviving, but thriving, building something worth defending. We couldn't have done it without help, Lyra said, without all of you. Perhaps, but you were the catalyst. You made him believe in home again. That's no small thing. As the party wound down and the last guests departed into the warm spring night, Lyra and Jareth stood on the front steps, watching the stars. Happy? He asked. Deliriously, she said. You? More than I have words for. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. Thank you for accepting my ridiculous offer that rainy afternoon. Thank you for making it, for hearing me wish for a home and deciding to give me one. We gave each other one, he corrected. This is ours, Lyra. Together. Together, she echoed, and kissed him under the stars. The castle stood strong behind them, no longer empty, no longer haunted by old losses. It was filled with light and laughter, with the memories they were making and the future they would share. It was, at last, a home for both of them, and for all the life they would build within its walls. Years passed, and the castle only grew warmer. Lyra continued teaching, becoming beloved by her students and respected by the community. Jareth emerged from the shadows of his past, taking a more active role in vampire society, advocating for peaceful coexistence with humans. Together, they hosted gatherings that became legendary, bringing together beings from all walks of life in celebration of unity and understanding. On their 5th anniversary of meeting, Jareth took Lyra back to the spot where they'd first spoken, the old estate that had been sold. It had new owners now, a young family that had restored it lovingly. I wanted you to see it's not lost, he said. Just changed. Loved by new people, the way our castle is loved by us." "That's beautiful," Lyra said, wiping at her eyes. "Thank you for bringing me here. I also wanted to ask you something." He knelt before her, producing a ring that caught the fading sunlight, for Lyra still walked in daylight, though she knew that would change when she was ready. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my home for whatever forever looks like?" "Yes," she said immediately, pulling him up to kiss him. "Yes, absolutely, yes." They married in the castle gardens under a full moon, with all their friends present and the stars as witnesses. It was small and perfect and exactly right, and when Jareth kissed his bride, the castle seemed to glow with happiness. 3 more years passed before Lyra decided she was ready. She was 31, healthy and happy, and certain beyond any doubt that she wanted forever with Jareth more than she wanted anything else. "Are you sure?" he asked one final time, the night they'd chosen. "I've never been more sure of anything," she promised. "I love you. I love our life. I love our home. I want all of it, for all time." The turning was painful but brief, and when Lyra woke the next evening with enhanced senses and eternal life thrumming through her veins, the first thing she saw was Jareth's face, anxious and hopeful. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Incredible, powerful, like myself, but more." She sat up, testing her new strength, her new speed. "Is this what it's always like for you? You'll grow into it, develop your own gifts. But yes, essentially." She turned to the window, where the stars were brighter than she'd ever seen them. "No regrets, none at all. I'm glad. Welcome to immortality, my love. Thank you for sharing it with me." They learned together how to navigate Lyra's new existence. She discovered she could move with the shadows, a gift that delighted her and that Jareth claimed he'd never seen manifested quite that way before. She stopped teaching at the day school but began offering evening classes for adults, finding new ways to share her passion for education. And the castle remained their haven, their fortress, their home. Decades passed, then a century. They traveled sometimes, seeing the world together, but they always returned to the castle on Thornwood Ridge. It was their anchor, their constant, the place where they'd found each other and built a life worth living. On the 100th anniversary of the day they'd met, they stood once more in the conservatory, where so much of their love had unfolded. "I heard you wish for a home," Jareth said, echoing his words from so long ago. "And I said, let this castle be yours now. I think it's safe to say it worked out." "You think?" Lyra teased. "After 100 years, you only think it worked out?" "I know it did. I know I found my home when I found you." He took her hands, ageless as he'd been that rainy day, and she was ageless now too, frozen in her early 30s forever. "Thank you for accepting. Thank you for staying. Thank you for making this castle ours. Thank you for offering. For seeing me when I felt invisible, for giving me not just a home, but a reason to believe in magic again." They kissed as they had 1,000 times before, and as they would 1,000 times more. The castle stood strong around them, filled with the warmth of their love and the countless memories they'd created within its walls. Outside, the world turned and changed, seasons flowing into years, flowing into centuries. But inside the castle on Thornwood Ridge, Jareth Blackthorn and Lyra Reeves had found what they'd both been searching for: a home, a love, and a forever to share it all in. And they lived happily and completely for all the long ages that followed.